Hello and welcome to another Paranormal Hunts podcast with Vicky, Sam and myself, Lynda. Today we're going to be talking about all things to do with ESP. So, Sam, what's your views on ESP and all that it entails?
So I think with poltergeist activity, why do some ghosts move things and why don't other ghosts move things? Is that us moving things with our minds, or is that the spirit? Are spirits actually moving things?
Rather than us creating it ourselves with our own mind. What about you, Vicky?
I think it's an extremely vast subject. So I think for me it's not very easy to answer. So if we look at just the pure definition, extrasensory perception, right? That could involve anything that's outside the normal realms of normal perception. Well, you could be talking about things like things moving could be in it, but it could also be things like clairaudience. It could be clairvoyance, I suppose. It opens up a whole world of discussion, and I don't think I'm able to answer how do I feel about it, because it depends entirely what we're talking about. And that's where my thinking goes a little bit skew, because I look at some things and I go, I like to think that's true. And then I look at other things and go, nah, just doesn't smell right to me. So I think it's really, really difficult to answer for me, because there's so much that could be included.
Yeah, what do you think about people being able to move things with their minds?
So I was talking to Sam about this earlier, and Sam raised the question saying, look, why is it that some ghosts move things, if we accept that they're moving things, and some don't? And I said, well, do we actually know that it's the ghost, first of all? Do we actually know that it could be the environment? Or, bearing in mind there's so much we're not aware of yet, it's an evolving science, looking at the human brain, both the chemistry and the biology of the human brain, I think it's a bit arrogant to say that is definitely a ghost doing it. And if we do look at things moving, are we sure, and I know the answer to this, but are we sure that A, it did move, B, it moved not because of an environmental factor, C, it moved because of a ghost, a poltergeist, or D, it's not something like telekinesis? Do we know that? I don't have answers, so I'm left with a million questions and very little to answer. But it was Sam that I was talking to about it.
From that, I said, but out of all of the hundreds and thousands of videos that you can find online or of all the poltergeist activity, are they all fake? Or are all of these people able to not realise they're doing it themselves, but are moving things because they want them to move? So they're thinking it's going to move and it moves.
But then you get into the really, when you say, are they all fake? Let's consider the very, very small timeline in which case things have been online. It's really, really small timeline, right? And within that timeline, what has grown up, and this might be really cynical, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Lynda, because the whole debunking thing, is there's a monetary value in creating something that's fake. So of all the thousands of videos that are out there, can you say that they're all genuine with the purest intent, or is there a value in a fake being put out there?
I think 99.9% is fake, what you see online. But, one of the general consensus about poltergeist activity is it happens a lot around teenagers going through puberty or stress. So is that some form of energy our body is creating to move objects? But I don't think what you see online, I don't think 99.9% is fake.
And if there's a correlation between the amount of poltergeist activity that you see and the age range in which the witnesses or the focal points of that energy is within the teenage mind, then surely that's the question that needs to be answered. What is it about the teenage mind or the puberty or prepubescent mind that, one, could drive this activity, or B, could fuel this activity? So if there is a correlating factor in this in terms of the age of the witnesses or the subjects, why are we not putting investigation into that as opposed to saying it's a poltergeist?
I think mainstream science is not ready for that. I mean, two of our most famous cases in this country, 30 East Drive and the Enfield poltergeist, centred around teenage girls.
Yeah. And when we look at research into teenage girls, and I don't want to get on a soapbox here, research is demonstrably lower when looking at females through puberty and development than it is any other demographic.
Or were those girls in the 80s just needed attention? Were they doing it for attention? Because they're teenagers and, you know, was it for attention? I mean, back in the day, you didn't get the attention that parents give their kids now.
But the thing is, with things like the Enfield and 30 East Drive, there were witnesses that weren't in with the family. In Enfield, there were police officers witnessed stuff move in, and other people, not just members of the family at 30 East Drive, witnessing things, reporters and that. So there's got to be something in it somewhere. Is it our mind, when you're in a certain frame, or hormones or electrical impulses in your mind, that somehow can create these things?
And I think that's a really big question that needs to be answered. In terms of the attention thing, I understand that's a trope out there. People do this for attention, and I'm not denying that at all, but I think that's an easy response. And I think actually, let's look at the science, let's look at the correlations, let's treat this seriously as a subject. And it is disturbing when you say maybe science isn't ready. Well, it should be.
It should be. I mean, you've got people like James Randi did. He put all that big money up to get people to prove that they can do telekinesis or be mediums or things like that. But nobody's ever managed to win that money. Is it because it's in a controlled situation and it's not flowing naturally? You know, I mean, as far as the SP, I think the majority of people, whether they want to admit it or not, it's the same as if you're thinking about someone and then they ring. Is that a form of precognition that you know someone's going to ring? Is that an extrasensory sense? Because something in your brain gets you thinking about that person, and then within a couple of minutes they ring you.
So there's the other side of that, which is some people are really attuned to reading micro patterns and micro gestures. So if something's happened, so I might see a Facebook post from Sam 2 days ago, and I might not ring her because I'm really, really busy, but it could be 2 days later. My brain has gone, you noticed something in that post. You need to be thinking about Sam. And normally she would call me within a couple of days of something happening. So is my brain more attuned to micro patterns? And so I could put it down to precognition. I'm fairly sure Sam will ring me tonight, or I'll have to ring her. Or is it my brain just catching up with something that it's slowly got time to process from a couple of days ago, saying something's happening in your friend's life, she's probably going to call you?
Yeah, I think coincidence is used far too much. I do think that I've had experiences where, you know, I've thought something or read something or heard something, and then or dreamed something even, and then 2-3 days later it's like a deja vu. All of a sudden, hang on a minute, that I've or, I mean, we drove through the village just now, didn't we? And Vic was sure we've been there before. I can't remember being there, but it was like a deja vu, wasn't it? You know, is that from something that's happened in our mind a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago? Or have we visited here before? We have never been here before, have we?
I don't know where I was last week.
No. So, I mean, how do mediums work in that sense? Because is it not the same if we're, you know, like Vic said, you know, she thought to ring me 2 days ago about something, and then I ring her. Is that not is that kind of the same thing as how a medium would work, you know, albeit not so delayed, they're in the moment?
Yeah, they're trained to cold read people. They know, they'll watch your face gestures, they'll watch your movements. So if they say something that registers with you, you will give little signals off that means something to you. Then they'll carry on with that, because I personally don't believe in mediums as mediums are today, as in like they'll go on telly, oh, pick somebody out of the audience, oh, I see spirit behind you. I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
I would support that, again, going down the neuroscience route and the humanist route, I suppose. There are people who can train themselves exquisitely to read micro gestures, the twitch of a muscle or the slight change in an intonation of a word. And what I would say is there's people you can look up who are really good on this, and Joe Navarro is one of them. He's like the godfather of body language. But even really good stuff for every day, you can look at the likes of Behavioural Panel. Chase Hughes has some really good books on how to teach you how to do this. Are there people who have learned to read those micro gestures at such an exquisite level of detail? And that doesn't mean to say everyone can do it. I don't think they can. But some people can train themselves, and I'm not saying that's what's going on with mediums. I don't know. But I do know people can train themselves beautifully to orchestrate and to read micro gestures, either in themselves and others. And you get that, and I'm not saying there's a correlation, but you do get it with people who are trying to pull the wool.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who is a medium, and I'd never ask her for a reading, because she knew when my dad died, she knew when my gran passed away. She just knows too much about my life. But I've had other friends that have gone to a medium that they didn't know from Adam, and they're like, she knew this, she knew that. So I don't personally really believe in mediums. I think they find out information one way or another. But is it generic? But my friend said she knew stuff that she wouldn't have known. You couldn't possibly know. So I don't know. I always thought it was kind of generic stuff, and they're just making stuff up.
It could well be, but the problem is, if we're talking about extrasensory perception, maybe these people visually can pick up on subtlest of clues given in words that are hooks. So they might mention, they saw someone's grandma and they see a gesture on your face. Or, I mean, that's a really cynical way of looking at it, and I'm not saying that's the way I would look at it necessarily. I'm just saying, if you're going to look for the reasons, extrasensory perception includes sight, and sight includes some people being able to do this at an exquisite level. And I'm not saying all mediums do that. I'm saying it's a possibility if we're looking at extrasensory perception. Sight is a sense. Maybe they can do it.
So it's not quite the same as us having the deja vu moment or us having the coincidence.
Well, it's still on a level, but some of these people can do it, like Vicky said, on this really minuscule level that we wouldn't even notice, But in the same sense, they can see spirit, they can hear spirit, they can feel spirit. Now, you two have been on investigations with us several times, right? And you can sense a room is not right. Now, is that an extrasensory perception, or is that instinct? Is there a difference?
I'm not sure there's a difference. And I kind of want to believe in it. I do. I know I sound really cynical. And I can honestly say I've had that. I walk into a room and I think, I don't know what's just happened here, but something is off. I walked into one room in one place we went to. I opened the door and thought, nope, out of here. Turned around, walked straight back out. It felt bad. I've not heard voices, but something in my brain, something has happened, and something is my brain has gone, go careful. You know, no one's whispering. There's no angel or devil on my shoulder whispering, go careful. It's just something in my brain puts me on alert. And that's fine, but I also find the same thing comes off of people as well. So are you just instinctively reading energy?
Yeah, I agree with that. I get that with people and rooms and places. You can walk into a room with people you've never met, and there may be one or two people in that room you think, nah, stay away from them. Is it because we are sensing, or some people might call it an aura or energy? Are we sensing that field around them as negative or positive? Is that my point is I don't know if that is an extrasensory perception or is it an instinct that we've all had but we lose to a degree.
I think it can grow, because I've always been the type of person I don't believe is got to actually slap me in the face before I believe there is a spirit in the room. And how many ghost hunts have I said, you can hit me, like literally slap me in the face, before I believe. But of late, I mean, I've had whispers in my ear that I've definitely heard. I've heard whispering, and then I've always said I'm not a sensitive person, am I? But when we went to George Jarvis and I walked into that bathroom, I thought my heart, I just immediately felt like the room wasn't right. But then the pain in my chest arrived and I struggled to breathe, didn't I?
So a couple of things there. No, you don't describe yourself as sensitive. That's fine. But I think people who've trained their instinct, that's extra sensory. That's extra sensory. That's outside the realms of norm. So that's extra. And just to be an absolute devil, we've been in really, really scary places and you've never had that reaction whatsoever, which is why it's a bit of a surprise that you did. So it's not like it was a panic attack coming on or acute anxiety or anything like that, because it was very slow. It was very localised. And I witnessed it, and it's not like you experienced that.
I think my point there is that I think it can grow. Like, the more paranormal investigations we've done, the more you tune into your surroundings in the area and the people, I guess, and all the rest of it. And your senses kind of grow, especially as the night goes on as well, if you're doing an investigation. But you learn to tune into your senses, I guess.
But biologically, you should be getting less scared, not more. This didn't happen on the first 20 investigations we've had. It's just been the last 2 or 3 that you've started getting these reactions. So is that pre-suggestion? I don't know. Don't think so. But it should be getting less, not more, if fear was a factor.
We walked into that place as a whole building and we were like, oh, this is all right. I mean, it looks awful, but it was all right. For me, it was that one room, a bathroom. Whereas you quite often would walk into buildings and in particular a room and not like a room straight away, would you? You know, you're definitely more in tune with that kind of thing than I am. So it is a shock for when it happens to me.
But I'm one of those people who has trained myself to do these things. So, you know, if the hairs go up on the back of my neck, I'm listening to it. Because I am the one who goes and sits on their own. Yeah. To make sure that I can kind of feel it and see it. And the fear's not generating the response. It's something I can see and feel. But for you, it's quite weird, and it's going the wrong way for logic.
Yeah, but that's kind of my logic. I'm backward. Backward.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we've all got that ability, and I think the more you go to these things and do these things, you open yourself up to more possibilities, and you're more willing to let yourself feel things, rather than our normal, the way we've been brought up as you're a child, you're open to anything, but as you grow older, your logical mind takes over. So all these things you put down to coincidence or just things that happen, you don't think about it, but the more you go on these investigations, I think you open yourself up more to that possibility, and you open your mind up more, like when you were a child, that these things are possible. So therefore, you start to experience more.
I suppose our lives are so busy, aren't they, that we're just, coincidences happen and we're just like, oh yeah, we haven't got time to think about that. That was weird, move on. Whereas if you're, tuning your body, doing more and more investigations or things like that, you're a bit more.
Albert Kostler, the Science of Coincidence, is a thrilling book, and it's kind of loosely linked with entanglement theory.
Of course you've read it.
A little bit. Hey, don't mock me. We're in a field. And the other thing is, maybe we're more in tune with it because we want to feel it. Some people don't go on ghost hunts because they're not interested, they don't believe. I'm not out there looking for Nessie because I don't believe. I'm not saying I empirically believe in ghosts. I probably do believe in the paranormal. So I'm there looking for it. So we're kind of the willing.
Yeah. I think you have to be. I mean, we can be on investigations. Now, some people hear stuff and others don't. Now, is that because they've got the ability to hear, like clairaudience, or is it because at that particular moment in time, they are open to it and they're able to hear it? Not that they've got this ability all the time, but is it because they're in a certain situation and they hear it?
In which case, we're back to that whole poltergeist piece, which is, why are we not, maybe there is studies, I just don't know, why are we not looking at where the energies of the witnesses in those rooms, where they are? We've got CT scans, we've got MRIs, we've got all these different things we could be using. Let's measure that as opposed to a cup flew off a table. Stop looking at the cup. Look
at
bigger.
The energy, yeah.
Look bigger. And if there is a correlation, I know, between younger and specifically female. What's the root of that? There's a correlation, and the correlation isn't causality, I know that, but there's a correlation. Look at it.
I think because a lot of mainstream science, and I don't mean this to sound in a horrible way, but a lot of mainstream science, same with health, it's men and women are not looked at. Most medications you take have been trialled on men. And I think this is the same with the paranormal world. Even if you're a female paranormal investigator, you get mocked. So, but I think, is it women that are more sensitive than men?
Evolutionary speaking, women would have been more in tune with instinct as a survival mechanism because we're the smaller of the species.
Yeah, and it's the same with, because I know there was a study in Russia a long time ago. I can't remember what her name was. It's Maria something, I think. That she was tested for her telekinetic abilities, and she's moving nails under a glass, moving her hands and everything. So there has been some studies, and it's the same as the Americans and the CIA, where they use the remote viewing.
Yes.
So is that classed as an extrasensory perception? And I've watched documentaries on that, and that is absolutely fascinating because all they're given is coordinates, and they draw and write, and they're so accurate. I mean, that has got to be amazing ability.
Yeah, but like all these things, it's extra, so I think it would be an amazing gift for others and a beautiful burden for some. And I would say, is it men who stare at goats?
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's really good fun.
What, staring at goats?
No, it's a film. Don't just go and stare at goats. That's weird.
I was going to go and try it.
You should do that. Just go and stare at a goat.
I think I will.
And see if you can make it fall asleep.
I could probably make it fall over.
Then we're filming it.
Goat tipping. It'll be.
You can tell you're a West Country girl.
Go to.
Go Teffen.
But I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, we all have that ability at somewhere. It's whether we choose to embrace it and open ourselves up to it or not.
And it's not fair that if you, and I'm absolutely contradicting everything I've said, and I'm aware of that, if you have this extrasensory perception and you can read micro gestures and all the rest of it, you're seen as a con person, whereas Ribena hire people with exquisite sense of taste to check for any recipe changes. Well, they get hired and everyone else gets mocked or called a fraud. So it's anything outside of the norm, it gets a bit...
But I think with that, though, it's because there's been so many people that's proven to be just on the make that it's spoiled it for genuine people. Same as even what we do on, maybe go online, we don't put that much on YouTube anyway, but if you do find something, you're automatically called a fraud, anything. Because I think deep down, yes, we want to find, but I think there's so many people that just are scared.
Yes. Yeah. And that goes back to your previous podcast about the value of debunkers. But you've got to be your own debunker as well. You've got to go, okay, I'm feeling really weird in this room. I'm feeling a cold breeze across my neck. You're stood next to a window in winter. Maybe let's debunk ourselves a little bit. And maybe let's look at this critically and let's apply some degree of rigour to the assumptions we're making. And I think that's a duty, and goes back to Sam's point, there's so much stuff out there. It's really difficult to believe.
It is. Until it happens to you.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. Because it's not happening to them, they don't want to believe it. No. Until it happens to you, then...
Yeah. I mean, because I've been in my own home, and I sat there, and then all of a sudden I felt 3 little fingers on my head. And that's not because I know we've got Ruby in my house. It was a genuine, you actually felt it. You know, and it's the same with some people who've got the ability, they can pick an object, hold an object, feel the energy of the object, tell you things about the object they know nothing about. I mean, I've tried it. I've never really got anything. Only once when we were over where you live, when we were by that tree.
Oh, at the Boar's Head.
And that's the only time I can honestly say that when I've touched something, I felt something.
Yeah, and we probably need to go back there, I think. And again, I'm saying all this and I'm trying to just be devilish I know that. But I've gone in places and I've felt things, I've seen things, I've heard things, I've smelt things. We were in Gloucester prison. Oh God, it was enough to make you throw up, and it came really, really quickly. We weren't in a crossing breeze, but it was rancid and it disappeared just as quickly. Is that an extrasensory perception thing? Is there something special about us and our nasal ability? I doubt it. Or was there something there? And I think that's where I come back to the original point. ESP is so complex for me. I could talk myself in circles.
Yeah, I think it's such a complex study. And as you say, there's not enough studies on it.
Nope.
At all. You know, you have people that say they get premonitions. You know, but we've all had dreams where we've seen a group of friends sat in a room, and 2 days later, it's exactly how you've seen in your dream, like you said earlier, Sam. Now, is that a form of precognition?
And I think they did a study, didn't they? A precognition unit in the British government. I think it was in 50s or 60s. And a couple of the people who phoned in dreams that they'd had were very, very accurate and a bit distressing and disturbing.
Yeah, because there was also another experiment they did. Was it with a random number generator? And they got loads of people to think of these certain numbers to see if they could get this machine to just produce the certain numbers. And it was quite a good study. And it became a real positive study that proved that a certain amount of people thinking of this number made this machine, the probability of this machine producing this certain number was so low. But when they did it, it came out so much higher than what it would normally do in a random way. And it's the same concept as, I'm not religious, but there's been studies on the power of prayer, I believe. And it does make a difference, but only if you believe.
And I would take the psychological view on this one, right, and say power of prayer is incredibly powerful, but so is writing a letter, writing a diary, telling a Guatemalan worry person that you put under your pillow. It's actually expressing a sentiment, and whether the universe is listening or whatever deity you believe in, yes, it makes a difference to that individual. You feel heard, you feel seen. And in terms of studies, I'm going to stare at some goats.
I don't know what studies you two read. I mean, I read Facebook studies. They're always right.
Well, we swap books.
Yeah. Facebook and Instagram, they're always right.
And that's the thing, stay off of those. Dive into some of the different stuff, I think, it's less sensation. We can go on ghost hunts all night and nothing happens. It doesn't change the fact that it's a thrilling event, that you've not necessarily answered something, but at least you haven't created more questions. And it's been a really, really good night, and you saw some things maybe that you couldn't understand. That's amazing, but you don't have to have a sensational answer.
Like, you and I always have a debrief, don't we, on the way home? And it could be like a dead night, like for us, like really quiet. The last few we've done have been really quite quiet, haven't they? But there is always something. We're always like, what? We had that whisper in our ear, and we had, all right, we did actually get EVP recordings from one of them, but yeah, we've had whispers. There's always been something, hasn't there? And when you actually sit there and think about it after, you think, well, hang on a minute. And me and you do always try and debunk, don't we?
Yes.
I mean, when I had that whisper in my ear, I then focused on the woman next to me for about 10 minutes, listening to her breathe to see if it was the same. And I'm like, oh, no, it's definitely closer than that.
Yeah, but what you don't realise, that woman went away saying, I had a terrible feeling someone was
watching me. I was watching her mouth. Watching her mouth open and close. It's just, is she breathing? But I was debunking. I was doing a job.
This is it, though. Why didn't that woman next to you hear anything?
Yeah, why didn't she?
Does it mean you have an extra ability to hear things and she doesn't? Or is it that whatever that noise made just allowed you to hear it? It's so complicated. Yeah. So complicated.
Here's the thing, I don't think I've got any answers at all.
I just think we need more studies, proper scientific studies. But to me, because they're so controlled and it's not natural, it won't work.
So how do you create a study then that mimics a natural environment?
This is the hard one.
But will verify it, but then gets the likes of the scientific information that would shut someone like me up in terms of, yes, that person witnessed this poltergeist activity. Quick, let's get them in an MRI. It's not exactly natural, is it?
No, but I do think it's like, if you're in a natural situation, I think these abilities come easier. Rather than if you were sat in a lab and they're saying, right, move that.
It would have to be somebody that claims they have a poltergeist in their house, and then somebody that doesn't, and I guess somehow wired up so that if they see this poltergeist activity.
I don't know about you, but in terms of natural situations, how many times do you wire yourself up on an evening?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that, am I? I mean, it's my secret.
You know, it's like the same old story, isn't it, with a certain person that bent spoons with his mind, so say. But we all know that it wasn't real. I mean, if I got a spoon out my drawer, if I got a spoon out my drawer, right, which hadn't been tampered with or anything, and give it to him, put it on a table, right, move it without touching it, it wouldn't happen.
So Sam did make the point, if I want to move stuff with my mind, I've got to headbutt it. And that was in the car on the way here.
It hurts.
So really, with ESP, we've got more questions than answers.
Definitely.
because I don't think there's one answer to anything.
No, but maybe, and this is proper geeking out now, but maybe there is a case of breaking it down and saying, okay, let's talk about ESP. There's 1,000,001 questions. Let's just look at this one bit, and let's consider the pros and cons of that one little bit. Does it marry in with our experiences? How are our experiences jaded or biased? Maybe that's breaking it down a bit further and looking at bit by bit. It would provide less questions, although I am going to go stare at a goat. I maintain I'm going to do that.
We'll do that study just for paranormal
You've got to watch
hunts.
the film first.
Yeah.
No, don't watch the film, but do it.
Is there a film?
There's a film and a book. It's I'll get her to stare at a goat and I'll film it and see what happens to the goat. If it just gets annoyed and wanders off.
We know she's got nerd.
Let's do it. Bring it on.
Well, I don't know what we can cover anything else really, but thanks, ladies, for your opinions and everything.
You're welcome.
And thank you, everybody that's going to listen. And we'll see you two on our next investigation.
Can't wait.
Looking forward to it.